Welcome back to my Star-Crossed Lover. I hope that you are having a wonderful week and that you are making the most of everything you're doing. I invite you today to sit back, relax, and enjoy Chapter 3 of Xiomara and Callen.
I'm hoping what I said could make you change your mind, though it doesn't really matter when my hands are tied. I'm trying to walk across the bridges that I've burned. My only way to you is gone, the tide has turned. So give me a light, show me what I need. I know I'm blind, but I hear symphonies of your heartbeat.
Xiomara. Hamish's visit seemed to be extended because he wanted to see the game that would invite Callen, Kavish, and Damon to fight in the arena. I believed he wanted to see if Callen would fail and perish on the sand. He had not sought me out since our last encounter, and I had heard from Eliana and Tiana that he had been practicing sword with his gods. I thought it strange until the night before the game that he announced at dinner that he would be taking part of the game. "For your own gain?" I asked. He looked at me with a smile. "Of course, Princess. Always my gain. I shall win this game, and you shall be a wife of a champion." His words made my skin crawl, and I smirked. A wife of a champion. You set yourself quite high, my lord, and these gladiators are likely going to make you swallow not only sand, but your words. Within 2 strides, he reached me and had his hand around my throat, clutching and staring at me with dark eyes. "Why do you anger me so? Is it that you are infatuated with this champion of your father's ludus?" he asked. "I have seen the way he looks at you, and how you return the gaze. Do you think I'm blind?" Laughing, I replied, "Blind? You must be, for you have quite forgotten how you cheated severely only to have him on his knees before you. Any man who strikes at the back of an enemy is considered a coward." The slap came, and it numbed my flesh as he shoved me to the ground. "You mock me for the last time, woman. If you dare do it again, you will be without tongue." I looked up at him. "I will dissolve this engagement." He smiled and bent down on one knee before me as he grabbed a hold of my chin. "And how so shall your father maintain king if I were to let you go? Right about now, the Senate is preparing to push your dear old man off the throne and replace him. Without my vote, he will be disabled as a man when he has to come down from his high horse and live as a commoner. Do you think he will love you then?" Tears filled my eyes as I held back the scream. "You wretched man, you are truly evil." Smiling, he pulled me against his chest and whispered into my ears, "Oh, you have not known evil yet. Continue to mock me, and you shall see that I birthed the devil. And what man puts his hand on a woman?" I looked over as Callen entered with his gladiators behind him. The look he gave me was one of concern as Hamish pulled me to my feet and walked to where Callen stood. "I speak your name and you appear. What dark magic do you hold, slave?" Hamish asked. "He's not a slave. He's a gladiator," I said. "All the same," Hamish said as he sneered. "He felt my whip against his back once, and he should feel it again if he does not mind his words. You, woman, know your place, and disappear from sight." I lowered my gaze and turned to walk toward my chamber as the 2 men continued conversing. The moment I reached the stairs and looked back, I saw Callen gaze up at me and my heart sink. The man was truly a man of honor, making sure I was well. Why had I not been gifted such a fine husband like him? Callen. Blood, death, honor, the things I had always known to keep me company now no longer had any use to my mind. All I thought about was her safety, and if she was being abused. Her gentle eyes, the smile, and her body that was fragile when pushed to the ground, all of it, seemed to dance inside my mind. I had witnessed Hamish's hand on her twice now, and all I could do was stand and appear frigid. There was nothing I could do without putting her life at risk. But tonight, when the young girl who normally served me dinner and water entered my cell, I found it shocking to discover that it was a princess underneath a cloak. She had put on a slave's attire and let her hair down to cover her face. "Princess, this is dangerous," I said. "I know it is, but I could not help it, Callen. I had to come see you." I reached for her and pulled her to the farthest corner of my cell, where view was out of sight. "What words do you need to exchange that requires you to risk yourself this way?" "Hamish aims to take your life," she whispered. "Every time he glances at you, all he sees is your title as a champion, and he wants it. The game, tomorrow, he takes a place beside you in the sand." I felt my heart drop. This is news. News meant to take your attention away from winning. I do not know how he will appear, but he will be drawing sword against you. Under no circumstances do you let him win. I smiled, touched. "Why does it matter if I win?" "Because a good man like you deserves the title and applause, while he should be given only the sand at his feet." "That is all?" I asked, slightly hurt that she didn't say more. But when she lowered her gaze and blushed, I knew she was hiding something else. She tried to move away from me, and I blocked her in. Raising her head to meet my eyes, she gave me a soft smile. "Callen, I must return." "Fine. Return, my lady. But what will you leave with me, so I may find the courage to strike blood against sand tomorrow?" I asked. Ever so slowly, she placed her hands on my arms, stood on tiptoes, and brought her lips close to my cheek. "Look up at me when you win. There, you shall find my smile celebrating you," she whispered, and then she softly gave me a kiss that sent chills down my spine. She couldn't look me in the eyes as she darted off toward the palace walls. The games. Behind the arena is the open sky, but below holds the blood of my brothers who have died while whispering their true name to the wind. Today, it was my moment, standing against the wind, and when I looked up at the tower, there she was, standing with a smile as gentle as her kiss against my cheeks. But the good ended there, because Cavish and Damon and I were against 14 of the Senate's gladiators, 14 who were brought from Spain and killed without mercy. And I knew that behind one of those masks was Hamish, waiting to slaughter me. "Gladiators! Begin!" King William's voice rang through the air. They were all wearing red masks and armor, holding swords that were twice our size, an advantage to purposely kill us. If the king allowed them to murder one of us, his pocket would be heavy with coin. But if we were to take on all 14 of the men and leave none standing, the price would double. I could not tell who was Hamish, and as they started charging toward us, Cavish and I were bouncing together our moves to keep them off Damon, whose eyes held fear. "Keep your shields up," I cried. The swords came fast, and it was strong. The roars and cries from the crowd overpowered everything, and Damon went under. I shouted out his name as he rolled and got back up, but not before he took a hit in the chest. Blood spurted from his lips as he coughed, and I kicked 2 men down, using them as a stair to jump to reach Damon. I pulled him to his feet just as I ducked an arrow. "Arrows!" Cavish cried. "They have archers positioned up high." I knocked out 2 with my sword, and as I turned to the tower trying to figure out where the archer was, I realized Hamish was not among the men on the sand. He was up there, behind the bow and arrow, smiling at me as he aimed straight at me. "Madman! He is a madman!" Damon cried. "Forget him! Take out these men!" I yelled. Between the 3 of us, we were able to take down 6 of the 14 men, but we were still at a loss of advantage, especially now with Hamish firing arrows. As I swung my sword, an arrow pierced right through my upper left thigh. I took 1 knee, and I heard the crowd boo. I looked up at him, and he was smiling, But when I gazed to where Xiomara was, her look was that of concern and fright. Pain shot through me as I stood and swung my sword at the men coming at me. The arrows were flying toward only me, it seemed, and another shot through my right shoulder. "Callen!" Cavish cried. "Get behind me!" Damon knocked out 2 arrows and a man as he came to join us. The hissing of the arrow was heard through the wind, and as I shoved both Cavish and Damon out of range, who should come running and block the arrow but Xiomara? The crowd screamed in fright as a shot clean through her shoulder, and she fell into my arms, her eyes dazed with affection, as her small hands came to clutch my arms. "Xiomara!" I cried. "Why the devil did you block the arrow meant for me?" She smiled and wrapped her arms around me, whispering, "It is the only way to dissolve this engagement of mine. You now have the right to strike back at him." Screaming out in pain, I handed her to Cavish to hold as I pulled the arrow from my thigh as Hamish came running through the gates onto the arena. As he appeared before me, I slammed the arrow into his shoulder, and he went down, his cry echoing through the wind. "You filthy slave!" he cried. "I will have your head for this." "Not if the king has yours first, for taking the life of his daughter," I whispered. I turned to Cavish and picked up Xiomara's body. The last few men we had not defeated suddenly moved away as I hurried her toward the open gate where the king and queen were already waiting with Medic. Xiomara. I remembered, screaming to my father, how unfair it was that Hamish was holding the key to the lives of the gladiators. It was not justice. My father, stern lip, remained silent, and eyes focused on how well Callen was fighting off the arrows and helping keep Damon alive. My mother had sat with her eyes gazed at her hands, unable to say a single word, while the people who represented the Senate were smiling, hoping for blood. If I didn't do something about it, Callen would lose, and the only way to make everything turn against Hamish was to put myself on the line. So I ran out to block the arrow, knowing the impact could kill me, but I did it because if I had not, Hamish's proposal would never be taken away. The moment I saw Callen's eyes widen at the sight of me, it was too late, for the arrow had already shot clear through me. The pain, it was like nothing I'd ever felt before, expanded through my body like a plague across the land. I felt my heart constrict and my breath stop as I fell into his arms. It wasn't until moments later that I felt the light escape from my sight, and I entered a deep black hole. When I woke, I was in my chamber with my mother beside me, glaring at me. "How dare you destroy what your father worked so hard for?" she whispered. "Do you know, right now, Hamish is at the Senate seat, pulling the throne from your father's hands. This life you're so used to, you can bid farewell to it." "Then so be it," I muttered. "I will not marry a man like Hamish and let him fill me with his seed. I would rather much swallow coal and rot." "Then perhaps it would be as you wish, Xiomara. The only reason the Senate is not throwing you and us out on the street is because the crowd determined that your foul act was a saving to the brute. We should keep our heads, but never our coin again." "What has coin done to you and to us, mother? It has stripped us of humility and made us into wolves." "A wolf is better than an ass who cannot see where the tail begins and the head starts. Once you are well enough to walk, you shall be brought to the gladiator quarters to serve them as you so wanted to save the life of one." "Is this how father will show appreciation and gratitude to me? Me, the one who saved his champion? The less you speak, the more value you will add to your head." By tomorrow afternoon, I was shown the inside of the cells where I would now be serving the gladiators. Ileana and Tiana came with me and were put into one cell with me. "Milady, let me do it. You are still healing," Ileana said. As we were putting together the room for our comfort, Ileana whispered his name, and I turned to find Callen walking toward me. The 2 women left the cell room, and I backed up until I hit the wall where he came to block me in. "What answer do you give for acting a fool?" he asked. I swallowed down the pain I had felt when I saw how he was being hunted down like an animal, My sight could no longer stand the mistreatment of you. You did this for me, or for you, to rid of Hamish, he asked. I let out a shaky breath. Both stories are the reason behind my choice. Do not ever dare to run across an arrow meant for me again. Tell me you hear and understand what I speak of. Why does it bother you that I am taking the aim of the arrow? Need you ask? He pulled me toward him, and he lowered his lips to mine. Affection, if given, will result in you and I in a war with everyone. I touched his cheek. I am already living in a war, Callen. I should at least have the right to choose the man I am willing to walk beside, and I have chosen you. I felt his lips against mine, but he didn't kiss as I had hoped he would. He simply lingered there, and then he stepped away from me. If I seek your affection, I would put you right into the aim of the arrows of your fathers. I cannot do that. I felt my heart sink from his words. So you would rather watch another take me as his? What can I do? Tell me, my lady, for all thoughts are absent from my mind as how to win you without losing you at the same time. When I reached out to him, he took my hand and held it for a moment before he dropped it. I cannot seek you, my lady. I would rather see the blood from my own vein run on the sand than put you into harm's way. Let us catch each other's shadow and forget the desire that burns from within. He backed away from me and then left the cell, and I dropped to the ground where the concrete felt cold against me. When I felt a hand on my shoulder, my first thought was of Callen. I cried out his name and stood, turning only to find Hamish standing before me. Callen? You dare to call that slave's name? And his fist came so swift that I had no chance to duck. This time it was a closed hand that met with my flesh, and it tore the insides of my cheek. The tanging flavor of blood filled my mouth, giving me a raw metal taste as I spat it onto the ground. I should have known. My eyes were blinded by your beauty, that I did not see what you were really trying to protect, he said. Your brave, heroic save was not to anger your father, but to dissolve our engagement from decree. I felt the anger shoot through my body as I gathered myself together. Coward is the only word I can think of when you enter my mind. Coward, is it? Yes! Only a coward would strike the flesh of a woman. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward him. Why do you keep giving me that title, my lady? Must I prove myself a man in order for you to lose that word against me? When I felt his hand on my waist to rip my dress, I screamed and shoved at him. Tiana and Ileana both came in and shoved at him, but even their strength was no match against his. They were down on the ground in a split second, and Ileana rushed off as Tiana covered her bleeding head. He once again came at me and ripped my dress from shoulder down, and I was exposed. And just then, Callen came running in and picked him up like an ant, throwing him across the room. His head slammed into the wall, and blood exploded over the ground as he picked him up by the collar and shoved him down. You dare to strike me for the head of a woman? Hamish asked with a mouthful of blood. You must really wish to die, as do you, when your hand touched her. Smirking, Hamish replied, You have been keeping a dark secret, slave. Once the king finds out about your affection, it is your head that will be placed on the entrance of the gate. Absent will be your title as champion, and you shall be made an example, as all slaves are. Let him go, Callen, I said as Ileana wrapped the blanket around me. His death is not worth your life. He snarled and shoved at Hamish. Remove yourself from sight. The lady speaks and saves your life today. Callen. She was shaking as she sat on the bed. Her cheek was now bruised, and dry blood was visible on her lips. The commotion was gossiped over the ludus, and I was certain at any moment the king would arrive. And just as I thought it, he appeared with the queen, who rushed to hold her daughter. What brings you here? King William asked. Father, Xiomara said as she stood, he saved Hamish from taking my virtue. King William's face darkened, and then he looked at me. Your company can be released now. Go, champion. Go, and I shall come to discuss terms with you shortly. I thanked him and walked out without looking at her for fear of her father's punishment. When I returned to my cell, Cavish and Damon were both waiting for me. The story of my saving her had already reached their ears, less truth probably, as gossip tended to replace words. "You will die young," Damon said. "A slave's eyes should not hold the daughter of the king in any affection." "I dared not to," I said. "Word on the gossip that is shared says otherwise," Cavish said. "Word is that you and the princess are already exchanging heartfelt words to bind a union." I shut my eyes. My fear is only that, and I try to avoid it. But how could I, when he was about to take what did not belong to him? "And who else would it belong to you? You?" Cavish asked. "Of course not. But the right did not belong to him. He is about to become her husband. It is absent about that title on paper and in witness among God." I could not stand and let him destroy her virtue. What I would find after would be the shadow of a good woman. I could not do that to her. She was much too good. Cavish shook his head in disappointment. "Callen, there are things we cannot control. This is one of them. No matter how much your heart desires it, strike it from your soul, because the princess is not yours to meddle with. Her marriage has been decreed to the prince, and if you argue with it, your blood will mix with the sand. It will not be a proper, honorable death by one made out of jealous rage. You as a champion cannot exit the world like that." I smiled and touched his shoulder. "Thoughts of such are already swimming in my mind, and I have been at war with myself for days, brother. The affection I hold for her cannot be brought to surface, but it does not mean that I will sit back and watch while another man ruins her." "You stubborn mule," Cavish said. "Must I break your legs to stop you?" I had thought about what Cavish had said, and I knew he was right, but a part of me could not let go of what lingered in my heart. The king had summoned me shortly after Cavish and I finished our conversation. When I entered his hall, he was standing, looking at a photo of his father. "My king," I said as I dropped to one knee before him. "Let formalities wither," he said as I stood up. "My father had a great vision for this ludus. He said he wanted nothing more than champions to stand and walk here. For years, after you became champion again and again, I thought I had finally fulfilled my father's wish." He turned toward me. "But today, I fear I might have to strike your flesh." "For saving the virtue of your daughter?" I asked. "From her own husband, and a man you have no right to touch," he cried. "Must you make me angry with customs I have laid out in stone? Never ever touch anyone you are not destined to quarrel with. Must you allow yourself to lose the title of a champion for her?" "Her?" I asked, disgusted at his tone of voice. "You are her father. Should you not be thanking me for saving her? Instead, words that escape your lips are of disdain for her innocence saved. I do not understand, my lord, the justice in keeping the prince's head attached when he was about to break something as innocent as her." He laughed. "A slave like you never would." "And a king like you does?" He glared at me as I gathered my courage. "My king, Princess Xiomara is too innocent to be left in the hands of someone like Prince Hamish. If I had not stepped in, the woman you would embrace would be but a destroyed version of the little girl you raised." Laughing, King William replied, "Even I, as her father, cares not for her soul. But you, as a slave, speaks on her behalf as if you love her. It questions everything you have been doing. Does love exist in your heart for Xiomara?" I didn't answer, and the king laughed harder. He clapped suddenly, and then Hamish walked out from behind the door, his head bandaged. His eyes were beaming with hate and anger as he stood before me. "I did voice concern, my king. And now you know the truth. The slave carries the image of your daughter in his mind and heart. Tell me, slave, does it rattle you so when I touch her because you already took what should have been mine?" Hamish asked. I curled my hands into fists. "Unlike you, I value her for everything she is. Never would I touch her uninvited. Seems like she would prefer your hand over mine. Let me do this then, my king. Let us duel. To the death. Whoever emerges the winner shall receive the hand of the princess. If I perish, I will order my people to hand over the decree to keep you as king, and let these two lovesick fools be together." "And if you live?" I asked. Smiling, he replied, "If I live, you will be pulled apart and buried in four corners where even the gods would never be able to complete you as a whole being to be reborn again. And she will marry me, and I will fill her every single night with my seed, where she will birth my sons." I walked to where Hamish stood, and I smiled. "Then duel to the death it shall be." Thank you for tuning in. Chapter 4 will be released shortly.
I'm hoping what I said could make you change your mind, though it doesn't really matter when my hands are tied. I'm trying to walk across the bridges that I've burned. My only way to you is gone, the tide has turned. So give me a light, show me what I need. I know I'm blind, but I hear symphonies of your heartbeat. Trapped inside, I forgot to look beyond, I see the other side. So give me a light, show me what I need. I know I'm blind, but I hear symphonies of your heartbeat. Now that's an understatement. To walk alone, I guess it's my repayment. Please give me a light.